Welcome to this new episode of Place Brand Leaders, the podcast of the Place Brand Observer. While this episode was meant to be a conversation with Costa Rica's head of country branding, Daniel Valverde, we unfortunately had to postpone it at the last minute. So you will hear from him next time how Costa Rica is approaching country branding and how it is, in my view, very smartly linking it to values of sustainability and even climate resilience. So instead, I am very happy to share with you this conversation between Aleks Vladimirov, who helps me produce the Place Brand Leaders podcast, and Martin Boisen. Martin is a management consultant and a founding board member of the International Place Branding Association. As a geographer, he specializes in the marketing and branding of cities and regions as part of urgent regional governance and planning. Martin lives in the Netherlands and has been involved in more than 100 advisory projects. Next to his advisory work, Martin is a lecturer in human geography and planning at the University of Groningen. He has published many research articles and book chapters on the topic. His areas of expertise are human geography and city branding, especially. In the conversation, Martin clarifies what place branding, or perhaps better, what place brand management is all about. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and if you have feedback or would like to contribute, as always, I'd love to hear from you.
Most of the advisory work that I do nowadays centers around place brand management. So that's the organizational part of it, right? So we develop strategies and the organizations to implement and carry out those strategies. And what you see is that the notion of place brand management is actually better than the notion of place branding, because place branding is it's supposed a lot of times people think that it's something that you can do. Place branding is something that happens whether you try to do it or not. And by talking about place brand management, you sort of like highlight that the task that you're doing here is trying to manage, orchestrate, influence a process that's already going on, right? So that is a semantic distinction which we feel resonates a lot with practitioners, because it also makes it clearer what their success criteria should be, right? Because if I make you a place brand manager, I will make you responsible for your efforts in trying to influence and manage this very, very difficult and complex process. But I'm not necessarily making you responsible for whether or not the reputation develops in the right direction, because I know that there are many, many, many other factors that influence the reputation of your country, region, or city, right? So you move it from an output to a throughput, and you move it from being responsible for image and reputation as endings, as outcomes, to the efforts trying to get all these different stakeholders to try and act more on brand. And then you believe that if you get more and more people and more stakeholders to act on brand, that it will have internal effects in terms of pride and consistency and all these different things, and external outcomes in terms of a more positive reputation over a long period of time, if you can be consistent about it. So that doesn't simply answer your question, but it is. I think it's an important vantage point. There is no answer to your question in the sense that every single country, region, or city that I've worked with, even within the same country or neighboring cities, even there's no blueprint that works everywhere. There are some general learnings that you can put up. I already shared the most important one. But depending on the country and the culture you're in, I would argue, and I would always try to make sure that the responsibility for this place brand management part is a public driven function. Not necessarily because they are the best to do it, but because I think that the reputation of a place is one of the commons. It's a common good, and the ones that are elected or appointed or whatever to maintain the commons and to work for the common goods should also be the ones that take this to heart. It's also because place branding is less transactional than place marketing. So when you move from place branding more towards the place marketing, and now we create a situation where the place brand managers are making sure that whatever the place marketing is doing is on brand, but does not bother themselves with actually trying to manage the supply and demand from the transactional perspective. They manage it from an on-brand perspective, right? On-brand, off-brand. Then you can have a much more mixed version where when it's about place marketing, it's more about the choices that you want to influence, and it's much more easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's much more easy than it is with place branding to show, for example, private stakeholders what's in it for them. And in that situation, it's also more useful to have the ones that are going to profit from certain spatial choices, to have them also take responsibility, take risk, and pay for the efforts that are put in trying to develop this certain markets, right? So I would say that the private involvement in terms of a percentage, if you may, a little bit artificially, I would say that you can almost draw a line through my schematic there, with place promotion having the most private funding and influence, place marketing being somewhere in the middle, and place branding having a rather low funding and influence from the business community compared to the other ones. However, that would be it would be wrong to take this as a blueprint and apply it in every single place and in every single culture. It's more meant to show that, for example, businesses are more likely to pay for stuff which they have a direct idea about what they're getting back from. And you can you can have a lot of influence from a place brand managing perspective by keeping the responsibilities for place marketing somewhere else, and then trying to just make sure that whatever they do, it's on brand. And you're not the brand police, because you don't own the brand of the place either, right? You're just there to nurture and orchestrate it.
Yeah. Okay. And is even within corporate branding, this branding police approach can exist. Is there a way that you can think about what are ways and artifacts to capture what's on brand and what's off brand, and how to have these discussions, and how that plays into setting up organizations to avoid the policing? That's an interesting part.
Well, we have a whole masterclass only on that topic, with a lot of examples from different cities that are doing it. Again, it's mostly about making sure that you have a clear idea that can easily be communicated to the different stakeholders about what it means to be off-brand. This is something that cities and regions don't like that much. But if you you shouldn't take off-brand, on-brand as a binary. It's not like if it's not on-brand, then it's off-brand, right? It's not like that. It's more like a scale. Something can be very, very off-brand if it goes against every single thing that is deemed, the values of the place. Something can also be neutral, in the sense that it could be anywhere, and in that sense, you might conclude, well, if it's neutral, it doesn't do your brand any good, it doesn't do your brand any bad. But then you also have to look at, does it communicate really a lot? Does it have a lot of strength? Because then it might sort of like create so much neutral noise that nobody will hear about the things that are actually on brand for the place. Right? So we work with what we call a place brand matrix, which has two dimensions. One of them is from off-brand to on-brand, and the other one is from very low impact to a rather high impact on the general image of the place. Whereas we know that having a very high impact on the reputation, or on the image and the reputation of the place, is actually rather limited.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because even to have a very large impact on the image of the place, you would be needing to do a lot of things for a very, very long time before you reach an impact. Now, to be able to work with that, you need to have core values. It's not enough to define your brand in terms of a theme. For example, we're the city of sports, or we're the city of this, or the city of that. That's not enough, because that automatically means that everything that does not relate to sport, for example, that you have difficulties figuring out how can something that's not about sports then still be on brand, and then you get all these platitudinal efforts of trying to get sports into everything, also to places where it does not belong. Right, so that shows you that you need to be able to define the why of the place and the core values of the place, and you need to have instruments in trying to help people assess the extent to which something is on brand or off brand. And what we've seen a lot in practice is that when you start developing those tools, which needs to be very simple, and you start to get people in a room where they start considering the extent to which something is on brand or off brand, that just from considering that, a lot of positive ideas are basically instantly brought to the table of how an activity or whatever, how that actually could be on brand. And this is the conscious orchestration that I'm always talking about, that you need to create moments in decision making, to create moments in consideration, and also in evaluation later on, where you basically talk about the impact that set activity is going to have on the image and later on reputation of the place. And this is not campaigns only or stuff like that. It's also, new buildings in places that's going to change the experience of your place. It can be whether you decide to have proper housing for the students or for the homeless or whatever. All these decisions communicate about what the meaning and essence and values of a place are. And if there's nobody at the table that take that angle on the decision making, then you're losing out on a lot of opportunities, and you might actually be hurting a lot of other efforts somewhere else, right? So I'm not saying that the brand manager should decide all of these things. I wouldn't want to live in a place where the brand manager decides all the policies. I'm just saying that they should be put in a position where they can advise on such decisions.
Okay.
And I think nowadays, in an increasing number of cities and regions, this is actually the case. That's what I see from my own advisory work. But of course, that's not really a good a good sample. I still see that if I limit myself to Europe, that there are really a lot of cities in Europe that have defined their core values, that have sort of like created a nice booklet about what their brand is, and they also act upon it, which is very good. But they basically lack the structural tools to take it from the level of intuition to take it to a more strategic level. So that is the next level that we can go to. We need all the kind of disciplines to fathom something as complex as cities, regions, and countries, right? We need anthropology. We need, the list is very, very long. We need all of these different angles and schools of thought. When I look at the teams that we compose to advise cities and regions, we don't work that much with countries, only with Luxembourg once. Otherwise, it's cities and regions. And when I see that the teams that we need to put together, we often have an anthropologist and an economist there as well. Not to position those two as the the most extremes on the whole spectrum. But places are very, very complex constructs, so you need different insights. What I would strongly advise is to pay attention to the terminology. Right, so it doesn't solve anything to just call the animal with a different name, right? It doesn't solve anything. And I think that place promotion, place marketing, and place branding in the professional side of things is beginning to really professionalize and manifest itself. So just inventing another language because we don't like the terminology is not really going to solve anything. And you see this happening, that marketing in the years of over tourism became a bad word again. So the word of marketing has a bad image, which is funny in its own right. But But due to over-tourism, you saw quite a lot of organizations tasked with this changing their names, right? So Amsterdam Marketing became Amsterdam and Partners, I think, or Amsterdam Partners. And then that also reflects that it's this network organization focusing more on branding and not only marketing and so on and so forth. But the real issue here is that politicians and stakeholders thinks that marketing is only about growth and it's only about more and it's only about this. So then don't call it marketing anymore. What scientists like to do and scholars like to do is to basically go in and then come up with a new term, which you can then package and load with associations that are not polluted by the existing ones. And that doesn't solve that much either. And what advisors like to do is to say, well, it's all a semantic discussion. Let's just get down to it and do the work. And whether you call that promotion, marketing, or branding, that's just the word. What's in a word, right? And I don't believe that. I think that we should, especially the scientists, should really take care to, when they write the next article on place branding or place marketing or place promotion, to provide a definition on what they actually what they're writing about, what they're researching, right? Because this whole organizational vulnerability, what I said, like, raison d'être in place branding, your actual description of your work is in place promotion, and your results are measured in place marketing. That also holds true for scientific contributions. I've read and seen so many publications lately as well, where I don't really know what they're writing about. I don't really know what they actually researched. And if you take that framework that we presented in the article, you can see that you would actually have to research very, very different things as well. Whether you're saying I'm going to research place branding or place marketing and place promotion, right? So that's interesting. And I think that we need to develop, if we want to develop more a toolkit, we also need to develop at least the scrutiny and professionalism of defining what we're actually doing, and not just muddle through. I think that's quite important to take this emerging discipline to a situation where it's not an emerging discipline anymore, but it actually reflects the fact that there are very, very highly skilled professional people waking up every morning, having a job that is to be defined within the place branding, place marketing, and place promotion framework.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening to Place Brand Leaders, the podcast of the Place Brand Observer. I'm Florian Käfer, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. My thanks to Aleks for letting us republish and share this conversation with Martin, which he originally published on his own podcast, Adapt Inc. Places, which I encourage you to check out as well. And if you have feedback on today's episode, you're welcome to email me or to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. And join me again next time for more place branding stories, interviews, and insights from industry professionals. The next time, most likely, we'll then have the interview with Daniel Valverde, in which he will tell us about how Costa Rica approaches country branding and how it links its brand positioning to values of sustainability and also addresses the climate emergency. And if you'd like to get the most of the Place Brand Observer, then I invite you to check out the TBBO Premium program for full access to all stories, how-to guides, interviews, and so forth on placebrandobserver.com. You also get exclusive discounts on our services. If you have questions about our premium program, just contact me and I am happy to have a chat.